social slime, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air, fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes countries laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social side, they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear, fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes countries lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Game On. I'm your host, Ron Stevens, and this is January the 3rd. So I skipped a couple of days last night when I did my show on Revolution Radio because I think I said it was the 4th. But it's the 3rd today, and it's interesting what's going on here. Anyways, I last night, this night show on Revolution Radio is killing me, man, because like I as hard as I try, you know, I crawled into bed at 3 a.m. and then have to get up and do this show today, so it really pushes things. But anyways, last night I remember seeing a video about, I don't know, 5 days ago or so of this Patriot group had a video out trying to roast up some patriots to head to Oregon for the Hammond boys, I guess it was. And from what I understand, and, you know, you can fill me in on the chat as we go through this, that had something to do with burning some grass or some brush grass or something. And apparently the what is it called? Department of Lands, DLM, I guess, Department of Land Management, which is a federal group, was going to charge the Hammonds with arson or something. I could be wrong on that as well. And they were looking at pretty stiff jail sentence. Why, I don't know. When I was a kid, in the fall and the spring, there was fires burning everywhere. It was in town. I mean, people were burning the grass off of empty lots, and then they would burn down their garden stuff, and we had fires everywhere. And I don't remember burning the town down. And in fact, the government people used to burn all the grass out of all the dead grass, the old growth dead grass that had grown up in the fall. Or over the year, over the summer, they would burn that all off in the spring so that we would have nice, fresh, green growth in the ditches. So it's just one more thing that the feds like to get up to, and it's all based on the United Nations. All of it, all this land management crap is all straight out of the United Nations, and so you know what's going on up there. I watched a couple of videos last night. There was yesterday when I was or last night when I was doing the show. I went back and looked at the chat. I don't know, half hour after the show was over or something, and I've seen some pretty negative comments about this guy named Pete Santilli, who I know nothing about. I watched a video last night with him in it, and it seemed kind of strange. But the fact is, and I don't know exactly what these guys are up to. I like the idea that they came to the assistance of their fellow man. I like that. Taking over the federal land management offices in Oregon, I don't know about that. That could go either way. Is it a smart move? I don't know if it's a smart move. It's a move. It's a move. I give them credit for that. It is a move. Whether it was a well thought out move or not, I'm not 100% sure. Because, the mainstream media is not going to play this out favorably. And hopefully, and I'm very hopeful, my understanding there's about 150 people up there now in the building. And I'm really hopeful that they garner some more support. Regardless of what I think, and I really can't think too much about it because I'm not as versed as I would need to be in it to really analyze this. But it's about bodies, okay, and it's about it looks like we're gonna have a standoff again, it's all about who blinks first, right? It's always about who blinks first, and out to these patriots, I want to make sure that they understand that you don't get yourself all jacked up and then start pulling triggers. It won't turn out well, guaranteed. And the other thing I don't quite understand about it is why, you go after this, and it's a very minor thing. You got this little Fed center in somewhere in Oregon, which the rest of the planet really doesn't give a sweet bejesus about. It's not on their radar. It's not on most Americans' radar. The Fed is an illegitimate government. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're not legitimate. In fact, there is no government in the United States that is legitimate. This idea of being a citizen, which goes way back to Roman times, which gives you freedom, they said, which is a hoodwink because what it does is enslaves you. Okay, as soon as you become a citizen, you become subject to the state. Now, I mentioned this last night, and that's fine. Okay, if you're subject to the state or the government, as long as it's a legitimate government, and the legitimate government goes right back to the right of the divine right of kings, and it's very specific. The government is only legitimate as long as it stays within the boundaries of the rules or the law of the Creator, and that's what America was founded upon. Okay, the inalienable rights of the Creator that were given to every single man on the planet. And so the government, the job, is to basically an administration process, okay, to make sure that everything is run properly, and that they don't start making rules that take them outside of the rules of which they are bound to, because they all took an oath. And what's happened is they blew this oath out way, way, way long time ago. And so therefore there is no such thing as a legitimate government. So it doesn't matter if it's your local government, your state government, your federal government. I don't care what country you live in. You don't have a legitimate government. You live under tyranny. And the best way to understand you live under tyranny is that your government has the monopoly on force. And if anything would tell you you're living under tyranny, that would have to be it. So you don't have a legitimate government. You don't have a legitimate media. There's no legitimate media on the planet. Not that's that's coming out of the big outfits or the newspapers. You can't find the truth has been basically wiped off the map. So the patriots, and I got to take my hat off to them. A lot of these people travel long distances to get to these places to stand up for their own. And their own is everybody, okay? Anytime the government comes down on anybody like a ton of bricks, that breaks the oath that they took, which is the oath to the Creator, that's who they took the oath to, okay? That's who they're really taking the oath to. They're supposed to be taking the oath to, but now the oath is to the state. Okay, the politicians, their oath is to the state. The police oath is to the state. The Army's oath is to the state. Okay, and the state is your oppressor because the state has broken the divine right of king's rules. Okay, so you don't have a legitimate government. So anybody that says that these guys up here in Oregon are breaking the law is an idiot. They're not breaking the law, they're upholding the law. But the important part is that they don't screw up. That's the important part. They don't screw up. So, you know, anybody that's got contact with these guys has got to keep them cool. Keep them cool down, right? Chill out, okay? Get the bodies in there, stand your ground. Okay, and, you know, somebody always has to stand down, and the whole idea of law is that law is moral. The whole idea of legal, it is amoral. That's the definition of the two. Now, if the moral men come to protect the moral man, and the amoral group comes in to tell them that they're going to have to back off, and they back off, well, then the amoral group won, and they've been winning for too long. So the moral men have to get up on their moral high horses and stand ground. I get that, and I'm proud of them for it. But they don't have to get to a point, because this is what they want. They're begging somebody to start shooting at the feds. They're just begging for it. And let them beg. Let them beg. But don't pull the trigger, okay? Stand them down from your moral position, okay? That's where the power is. The power isn't at the end of a rifle, okay? This is a psychological, spiritual war that we're in. And you know, the end of a rifle is not going to fix the problem, okay? Moral judgment will fix the problem. And so I hope these guys have this in their mind when they do what they're doing. But I still don't understand. Really, I get on the one hand what they're up to, and I appreciate what they're up to, because you know, it's taken a long time for anybody to stand up. Really, I mean, we watched Waco burn, we watched Ruby Ridge, and a bunch of other stuff went down. We watched the towers fall. And so on and so forth. So there's been a lot of crap going on, Oklahoma, all kinds of crap, and all these mass stage shootings or whatever that's been going on. It's how you fear the people, and so you know the government's coming to your rescue all the time, right? Well, anybody with a half a brain knows that's ass backwards. So it's a big move for these guys to go and do what they did. But it's really so minor that if it's not played correctly, it's going to backfire badly. It can't have that. You know, I said this years ago when I called up my great friend, Alex Jones, my great buddy. What an a-hole from hell that boy is. But anyways, when I called him up and explained what had to get done and how easy it was to take the country back, and it is extremely easy to take the country back, and you ain't going to take the country back from a DLM office in Oregon. You certainly ain't going to take the country back from there. It ain't going to happen. But it's a start. But if the Patriots are just going to run around trying to put out brush fires, it's going to be a long time coming. And I don't know if you can win it that way. I would think doing it that way is eventually going to degenerate into some sort of a civil shootout, which I hate to break it to the Patriots, you're outgunned big time, okay, really big time, and you can't win from the end of a rifle. You can, however, win if you just do what's necessary. And we need to do this around the world. This isn't just about America. The problem with America is when America falls, the world falls. Okay, that's the problem. That is the big problem. Everything else is capitulated, except possibly the people in the United States. And the reason they're flooding you with immigrants from the South and immigrants from overseas is to water down the body of what America is supposed to be, okay? Because once they get all these immigrants voting, they'll be voting for UN agendas, and they will outvote your ass, okay? And you will pay the price for that. So, as I said to Mr. Jones, and if anybody from the FBI or the CIA or the UN is listening to this, tough, okay? You know it, and I know it, okay? You guys are an international crime syndicate, and it has to come to an end, okay? You have hurt people, you have butchered people, you have destroyed nation after nation after nation to get what you want, and it has to come to a stop. So, as I told Mr. Jones, it's very, very simple. You've had how many million-man protests out in front of the White House, and stand there with your placards and that, and we ain't going to take this shit no more. And they just smile from the inside and laugh because you have never gotten a backbone to walk in. And like I said, Jones, you want your country back. And I appreciate what the Patriots are trying to do. These are all God-fearing, God-loving men and women. And what has to be done is we have to take the country back. And that is very, very simple. And that is you don't need a hell of a pile of people. There's 300 and some odd million people in the United States. If you could gather up even 10,000 of them, you could take America back in a flash, and that's simply you walk into the White House. You walk into D.C., basically, and you cut that place loose, right? And that means you take it over. Just like you're taking over the Oregon thing. You walk in, you kick the door down, and arrest everybody inside, and declare it America again, not some international corporate Pope-run piece of Vatican garbage that it's become, but America. Land of the free. Well, as long as the tyrants in D.C. have control of the Fed, they have control of the states. Therefore, this idea of America the free cannot possibly exist. It's an absolute impossibility. Because these guys crossed the line and broken the oath. So, having done that, okay, they've stolen. I mean, these are thieves. They stole the freedom of the people. They stole the lands of the people. Okay, and turned you into a corporate fiction of which they feed off of. How sick and pathetic is that? So as I told my good friend, Mr. Jones, it's a good name for the guy, Mr. Jones. I feel like I almost feel like every time I hear the name Mr. Jones, I think maybe I ought to, segue into a commercial for some wonderful product I have to sell you, or whatever. But as I said to Mr. Jones, you just simply, 50,000 people would be wonderful, 10,000 you could live with, and walk in, take over. You're not going to get much, there's not going to be much shooting going on. You have 10,000 people on side. You walk into the White House with 3,000 or 4,000 people. They're going to back down quick, and arrest them, and charge them on the spot for treason, charge them on the spot for war crimes, and whatever else you want to charge them with, and hold them. And then at the very same time, though, you have to have technicians and mouthpieces, talking heads, that have the capacity to sit down calmly. You need the technicians to be able to walk into the major TV outlets, radio outlets. You have to have people that can go into the newspapers, major newspapers, and you need writers, editors, and walk in and arrest those people for treason, and whatever else you want to arrest them for, and set your talking head down at the desk, and get your cameraman on, and get moving, and explain in very simple terms that America has been returned to the people. Okay, that's the start point. That's the real start point. Has to get done. I have a lot of pride for these guys who they've got the media against them, they've got the governments against them, they have the police against them, they have the army against them, they have all these federal agencies against them, and yet they feel it's important enough that they should go and kick down the door in some Fed office in Oregon, wherever in Oregon, and and make a stance. That's wonderful, but it's very, very important that they do this correctly, because if they screw up, it will backfire. Okay, we saw what they did. We saw what they did with Randy Wheeler's family. We see what they did with the Davidian branch. We saw what they did. We saw the media go after these people, okay, and demean them and turn them into terrible, nasty, desperate, dangerous people. And you can't have that happen to the Patriot movement. You can't allow that to happen. You don't want to be coming from your back foot all the time explaining this stuff, okay? So, while I'm very proud of what these guys are doing, I don't know who this Pete Santilli guy, he looks like a real dick to me. I watched his video last night. Whether he's a dick or he's a patriot, I have no idea. But I wasn't real impressed with that video. It was an hour and something long. I kind of skipped through it, see who was talking and that. But the basic gist of it is fine. Now I see a new video up here this morning that Oregon's local news is dangerously rigged against the Patriots. Well, what were you expecting? What were you expecting? Okay. Until the people get control of the government workings and the media workings, how could it be anything else? Okay, how could it possibly be anything else, right? The Patriots are looked at as domestic terrorists, okay, because they're going against the government. Well, they're not going against the government because you don't have a government, and haven't had a legitimate government. If there was ever a legitimate government in the United States, when you look back how this thing was created, like everything else, by companies. We started with the Virginia and Plymouth companies. Up here we started with the Hudson's Bay Company, the East India Company. They're all commercial enterprises. So whether or not it was ever legitimate is up for debate. But the fact is that it has degenerated to a point where the people have no say about anything. Okay, and these so-called governments are hooked up, as they always been hooked up with the Vatican, but now they're all hooked up with the UN, which is just, a branch of. And everywhere you go in your country, my country, in any country, you can go there and you can see the internationalist agendas being implemented throughout the lands. And they're stealing all of your resources. Okay? That's the game. You own nothing. They own everything. But you and your families built everything. Yet you don't own anything. Okay? And that's just plain wrong. Okay? So these people are thieves. They stole your lands. They stole your freedom. Okay? And it's time to go get it back. And again, like I said, I really can't temper this enough, and that is, you won't win out the end of a barrel. You can't do it. All you have to do is look at war in general. It's a messy game. Civil wars are extremely messy. Okay? And you don't want to get into it. You don't want to go there, right? You want to exert your God-given power to overthrow these clowns, absolutely, because you're under the control of a tyrannous government. And therefore, they can't be a government. Therefore, what are they? They can only be criminals, okay, because they've broken the law. And we got to get law back. That's one of the first things that has to happen. This legal system has got to be eradicated. This idea that you can't buy, you can't sell, you can't work. Only the legal person, you working as an agent of the legal person, works for them. You can't present yourself in court because the court doesn't recognize you. Well, then obviously it can't possibly be a court of law, can it? So this whole idea of legal has got to be put to bed once and for all, and we got to get back to law. Now, the problem is, you see, if these people up in Oregon, they got busted for burning some grass, I mean, just the thought of that is ludicrous. I mean, that is just ludicrous, right? But if the people in that neck of the woods, they know they burn grass forever, okay? And if we had law, and the Hammonds, I think it is, who were charged with this, were sat down, and they said, okay, law, of course, you have to have a victim. Without a victim, no law's been broken. That's why the legal system can't work in a free country. It's impossible to work in a free country. Because when they can charge you and drag you before a court, it's not a court, it's a commercial business, posing as a court. But when they can drag you in there and there's no victim anywhere, it ain't law. Simple as that. It's not law. It's theft. Okay? It's theft in shackles. And so the legal system has to be put to bed once and for all. The 1200s, and again, I am not advocating violence. We don't need to have violence. But in the 1200s, the people way back then figured it out, what the problem was. And it was the lawyers and the judges, and they went after them. And they got rid of a gutload of them. And they got the king basically to agree to this thing called the Magna Carta, which they held up to us for so many years as this wonderful document. But when you go back and look at it, it didn't have any power because when the lawyers got back, those that remained, they said to the king that you don't have to abide by this thing you signed because you signed it under duress. But I think the idea of the Magna Carta was to get back to the divine right of kings, and that is you don't cross the laws of the Creator. Well, an attorney is someone who's turned from one lord to another, okay? And so we know that they've broken their oaths and they're illegitimate. So that has to be fixed. So we're moving into an extraordinarily interesting time. For many, many years now, decades, people have been doing research and getting a handle on the reality of this fictional world we live in. And in 2016, they're going to try and come in and close it out. Okay, and that is to enslave everybody once and for all into this world government garbage, where no one will be free. And so it is definitely pushback time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is pushback time. But we have to do it in such a way that as few people as possible get hurt, and that people, instead of going, oh, those are those people that are trying to take over the government, we have to turn it around so the people rejoice when the government is taken over, when it's not a government. It's hard to even say some of this stuff because it's not a government. When the criminal element that runs these lands, that controls these lands, has been moved off these lands, let me put it that way, then you will see a different attitude from the people. Okay? And if it's done properly, and the people are finally told that all of these dumbass taxes that they've been robbing your pocket are gone. That all of these stupid statutes and regulations, which are just designed to harm you and shackle you, are gone, and that we're moving back to law as rapidly as possible. And that if you have not caused your fellow man harm, then you have broken no law. And that's the attitude that we got to get into people's heads. We got to get rid of this fear shit. We got to get rid of this idea that people have that the government is somehow going to look after them. I mean, last night, just before I was off air, I was talking about in Vancouver, where the government was patting itself on the back because it was paying for the bills to bury homeless people. My question is, why are there homeless people? Okay, there's no reason to have homeless people. We're just super rich nations. Why have we got homeless people? And then it went on to say they buried, like last year, 2,000 people. And the government picked up the tab. Aren't we great guys, the government? Well, the government doesn't have any money. The government never had any money. The only money you can get for this fictional government nonsense is the money they take out of the other people's pockets. So the government didn't say, on behalf of the people whose money we stole, we're proud to say that we used some of that money we took from you to bury these poor homeless people, of which, well, we decided they're going to be homeless, and so on and so forth. There's no truth coming out of these people whatsoever. And people got to get around the idea of what a government actually is and what it's supposed to be and what this thing they call government today actually is. Okay? It is not a government. It is an international crime ring. Okay? It is mafioso playing itself off as government when in fact it's the exact opposite. So, I'll keep an eye on this this thing up in Oregon, and all I do is cross my fingers and hope that everything works out for everybody. I'm pretty sure I know what they're trying to do. Again, I just hope they don't get jacked up, and don't feel pinned down, and I hope they don't set the building on fire and all the rest of this stuff, right? Because the media is just sitting back there waiting for anything that they can use to broadcast 24/7 that would put these men and women that are up there in as negative light as possible. Okay, and so power to them, and everybody stay safe and keep a very, very cool head. And remember, it's about moral. It's about the moral upper hand. And when you got a bunch of amoral thugs coming at you, the guys coming at the Patriots up there in Oregon, they don't have the same type of fortitude, if you will, that the guys that took over the building do. They know they're on the right side. They know that. And these goons they're going to send in know intrinsically that they're on the wrong side. But they're playing that side because, well, they're lazy people, sick people, looking for an easy ride off the so-called government's back. And when they're faced with a group of highly moral men and women with their feet planted firmly on the ground that belongs to them, doesn't belong to anything fictional, that's real ground they're standing on, those are real boots that are on the bottom of their feet, and that's real blood coursing through their veins. They are not persons standing up there at Oregon, they are men and women, as they're supposed to be. And the thing coming at them is a fictional thing. And as Alice in Wonderland said when they set off with her head, and they made the new rule that she couldn't witness because she was growing at too rapid a rate, and they made a new law. This is what these so-called governments do. They make these new laws to satisfy what they want. Everybody, when they said, when she just pushed ahead from her moral standing and her understanding of the fiction that she was presently in, and they yelled off with her head, and everybody in the court would go, "Ah!" Alice knew that they were just playing cards, and therefore she had no fear of them. And a moral man has no reason to fear these clowns. But it's important that you have a lot of moral people standing in one spot. One moral man they will take out in a flash. So if you're near Oregon or you're looking for a holiday, and it's, say, you're in, I don't know, wherever you are, maybe you're in a really warm part of the country and you're saying, geez, it's really warm, and I'd like to get cooled down a bit. Well, slide on up to Oregon. It's a little bit cooler up there, some cool air coming in, and meet some of your fellow Americans, okay? Not citizens, Americans. I really dislike this word citizen, because citizen is interchangeable with subject. It has the same meaning of subject, but you're subject to. Okay, and as long as you're in a position of subject to, that they can write all the rules and regulations they want, because you've accepted that you're subject to them. So the last thing I cringe every time is, I'm an American citizen. Well, then what are you bitching about? Okay, what are you bitching about? If you're an American citizen, you got nothing to bitch about, because you agree that you're a subject of the state. And the state can do whatever they want to do to you and tell you to do whatever they want you to do, and you will do it, because you're a proud citizen. And we got to get people around that idea too. This whole idea of citizenship is a crock of nonsense. You're men and women, plain and simple. You live on the land, plain and simple. And we got to get back to law, ASAP. Now, anyways, not trying to get preachy here, just trying to say what's on my mind. And if you disagree with what I'm saying, well, start a show, kind of thing, right? I think I pretty well got a handle on what I'm talking about. And I'm saying that 2016 had better be the year we pick up the pace, or we are going to go into some serious trouble. Anyways, I am. Uh, uh, yeah. No. See, I see here in the chat. And if you're just listening to this show somewhere else off of one of these other feeds that are out there, I really do encourage people to come into the chat. Now, a lot of people have been to a lot of chat rooms on a lot of these network shows and been pretty well ticked off by what's going on in these chat rooms. But I got to tell you, of all the chat rooms I've ever been in, and all the places I've ever done these shows on, I got to take my hat off to the folks in the chat at UCY.tv. Generally a good group of people, and if somebody starts to get weirded out and out of hand, the rest of the chatters usually jump all over them. So, don't not come to the chat because you've had bad experiences in chat elsewhere. I do encourage anyone listening to this to just punch in UCY.tv and slide over and hit the chat, and you might make a new friend. Who knows? And if you are with the so-called government and you're listening to this, please, by all means, jump into the chat. We'd love to talk to you. Because remember, you who are in the government, quotes around that thing, remember, you also have been lied to since the day you were born. Okay? So, I'm not saying everybody that's in this so-called government is evil, but we've all been lied to since the day we were born. And so we all need to come to grips with that. So, anybody that's out there, you're more than welcome to come and join in the chat. That would be wonderful. Now, I saw a thing there up there that, and I saw some of this in some of the videos I watched last night. And if I can find up here, somebody put in here, whether Bundy is a shill or not, his supporters are genuine, and the planners want them out of the way. I was running into stuff last night in some of these videos I watched where people were, are these guys shills? Is Chantilly a shill? Who knows? I don't even care. I expect the people that are involved in this up there on the ground should have the wherewithal to be able to pick out who's right, like who's on board and who's not, who's a shill and who's not. And if they are, well, then just ask them politely to leave. We got serious business to deal with. So. Yeah, I'm just concerned that because this is hardly a big deal, it's a small thing really when you look at the bigger picture, but handled correctly, there are tens of thousands of people in America that are probably watching this right now, and whatever takes place here, however this is handled, is going to go a long, long way to those other people either standing down or standing up. Okay, there's a lot of people sitting there that want to go. They want to do what's right, but they're still fearful. And if this blows up, it could have a very negative effect on those who are looking for a positive change and want to get involved in it, but are still somewhat fearful in that. So this is going to either encourage people or discourage people, depending on how it's handled. So you guys up there in Oregon, handle it with kid gloves, all right? And make sure you get the proper outcome out of this. Otherwise, it was worse than not going there at all. And that's just the fact of the matter. Now, I'm going to... Well, yeah, see, and this is true. This is so true. Uh, I've kind of been in and out of a lot of this stuff over the years, and as somebody said, outsiders equal snitches. Well, that's very, very, very possible. Not even possible. It's absolutely likely that these people coming in from all over the place, and the same guy left a comment here. All of a sudden, you're going to trust some nut who drove 1,500 miles to get there that you never met, and that's true. Okay, you have to have eyeballs here. Okay, you got to have some people who are extremely good judges of character. Okay, who understand the nuances of character. Who can keep an eyeball on what's going on here, right? Because if you do get some of these guys in here, and it's amazing, the feds will shoot at the feds, okay? They will. They'll shoot at each other to crank it up. So that's what I'm saying. You got to be very, very careful in this thing, extremely careful what you're doing. So oh, hey, brother patriot, right? Glad you're here. And then that so-called brother patriot starts shooting at the feds. It turns out he's a fed, right? I mean, this is how crazy these buggers are, right? So it's very, very, very important that everybody keeps their cool and everybody keeps an eye. And make sure that you make sure that there's no infiltration there, okay? And one of the best ways to do it is just simply ask them straight out when they come in if they have any attachment to any law enforcement agency or any federal agency, because if they are, they have to answer you, yes, that's the rules. So if you do that, then if one of these guys does start taking pot shots, he's already outed himself, you have the Patriots have plausible deniability because they were already outed this cop, this Fed agent or state agent or whatever. But enough of that. Anyways, I'm going to try this right now. Well, wait a minute. Before I do that, I'm going to just buzz back here for a second and see if I have anything interesting come down the pike here. Now, I don't know. Just while I'm at this, I don't know if anyone. What was I going to say? I forgot. Anyways, doesn't matter. I'm going to try and bring in Kathy Hamilton here. She sent me a note this morning, or just before airtime. She's busy trying to get some stuff done. And I haven't talked to Kathy in some time. And I actually miss talking to her. And I do believe that she is one of the best researchers out there. But she concentrates mainly on the local level. And that's where we really get at them, at the local level, because it's your local councils that are implementing this international crime against the people. And so that's the one place you can get at. I mean, there's nobody living in a local town, village, city that can't drive down to the local council meeting. Okay? There's nobody. I mean, you don't have to drive to Oregon. All you got to do is go down to the street to the local council chambers, local town hall, and get in their face. And Kathy is brilliant at that. Maybe she could start a training program for people. Now, just before I do this, I'm going to listen while I'm talking. I see here on the Toronto Star, Toronto's largest paper, one of the largest papers in the country, which has been spewing everything wrong for as long as I can remember. I see a video here that says activists, militiamen occupy Oregon Wildlife Refuge. So it's only 1 minute and 14 seconds long. So as I'm talking, I'm going to listen to this thing and see what's cooking. This is interesting. Okay, that was just a little clip. I don't really even know where it came from, but it's on this site, and it was pretty simple. And Hammond Jr. there at the end basically said what he needed to say. It's not about me; it's about America, and the wheels are flying off of this thing. So it's just a little wee short clip, and so the media right now is already excuse me. I love it. I love it. Somebody just put the pentagram in the chat. It says, "Is this the Toronto Star?" Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. Everybody wears little beanie hats there. That's too friggin' funny. That is really funny. Thanks for that. Anyways, that breaks me up. Anyways, there's a Toronto Star, and and that little clip's in there, so I'm sure it'll ramp up from there. But the one thing that Hammond Jr. said, which is absolutely correct at the end there, and he said, "This is not about me. It's about America." And he didn't say United States. He didn't use the word citizens. He just said it's about America. And that's the lands. That's the people. And so that's good. Anyways, I'm going to try and hook up with Kathy here. I'm gonna try and bring Kathy in here. She's busy as hell this morning, and so I'm gonna give her a couple minutes. She's been running around and out of breath, so I'm just gonna give her a couple minutes, and then we'll bring her in, and we'll go from there. I don't know what it takes. We're up here. I'm up here in Canada, and we got the same problems here, as you guys do down there. I mean, we're going to go to a police board hearing on the 11th, I think it is, and we're trying to round up as many people as we can get. Hopefully, we can get at least 50 to 100 to crowd the town hall there. and because these police board hearings, we'll see if they show up. Last police board hearing I was at, the chief is supposed to be there, and so is the staff sergeant. Neither one of them came into the room. They stayed outside the building until I left, and they run in to see what I had to say. Real chicken shits. So we're going to go to this police board hearing over the raw milk deal over in Durham, Ontario, on the 11th. And the mayor, could be really good because the mayor is actually the chair of the police board over there. And again, the chiefs and that are supposed to show up. So, if we can get 50 to 100 people to roll in there, then they will understand very quickly that this isn't about the 4 or 5 men they charged with obstruction. It's a whole lot bigger than that. And then we will have some serious questions for them, and we will explain the law to them, and we will make it very clear to the mayor that the mayor is actually in a position of liable tort for any misdeeds of the police, and see if we can't back some of these idiots off. And again, I mean, what do the police know? They just get told to do things. They're like the army. Well, I was ordered to do this. I'm just doing my job. Nothing I can do about it. Yada yada yada. We have to educate those people as well. And I am so looking forward to 2016. Been is a long time, and I'm finally seeing some forward movement that looks positive. So we'll do that. Anyways, I'm going to go see Kathy if she can get her in here. If we can get her in here. And then we're just going to have us a nice chat, see what she's been up to, because I haven't talked to her in, too long. So I haven't. So hopefully we can hook up. And we'll see what we get. Oh, tired today. Hello, Kathy, my love. How you doing?
I'm all right.
You making lunch? Are you making lunch?
No. Oh. No. I just got up off the carpet. I was spot cleaning the carpet. We got the Christmas lights down outside. The Christmas trees down, defrocked.
Yeah, it's supposed to get cold here.
It is here too, and that's why I thought, if I can get the Christmas lights outside down before they freeze onto everything, it'd be really nice. I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah. Well, you always are, right?
Not really.
Huh?
No, not really. I wanted to steam clean the carpets too, and I thought, no, we'll just get the spots first. We'll do that another time.
Yeah.
Just so busy. We had a good Christmas. How about you?
We had a good Christmas. It was a good Christmas. There's not as many kids around anymore. I think there was only 1, 2, 3, 4 little kids, 4 or 5 little kids, and way long time ago there was hordes of the things, right? And it was good. It was good. We had we went out for dinner with the family, and then over to Artie's sister's place for dinner the next night or the night after. And then we went to Mom's Friday, I guess. Yeah, New Year's Day for a brunch, which was really good. And but other than that, it was quiet. And I tried to stay off the computer for a whole day, which I think I did, which was the first time in a long, long time. It was weird. But just said, no, I'm not doing nothing, man. I'm not reading nothing. And because you know what it's like once you get reading and researching, that can go on for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
Because one thing leads you to the next thing all the time. But no, you've been at the board hearings, right? You've been at the local council meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're brilliant. And I can't explain that to enough to people. Maybe you can do it today. How important this is, because till you get in and actually watch these people in action and understand what they're up to, you're actually missing a lot of free entertainment, right?
It can be quite entertaining, but I'll tell you something that I'm eternally grateful for is that in 2012, I think it was mid-2012, they started posting the full agenda package for every council meeting online, the same package they give to the press and each of the councillors. And so up until that point, all we ever saw was like the skeletal agenda. If you just went to the council meetings, they printed out the outline of the agenda, but you didn't have any of the background documents
Oh, really?
unless you asked for them, right? So
Right.
yeah, so all of a sudden things got a lot more interesting for me, and I realized that, just going to the council meetings was a good thing, and reading the minutes was a good thing, but you still probably won't have a clue of what's really going on unless you read all the background documents first. So that was a real bonus for me, and takes quite a bit of time to study them, but that's where a lot of the information is. And the other thing is to make sure that you don't just read the titles of bylaws, you actually read all of the bylaws. And if you have the full agenda package before the meeting, there should be copies of the proposed bylaws that are up for adoption. And as I think I've talked about on your show, honestly, Ron, it's been so long that I'm not sure now what I've talked about and what I haven't before, and I'd hate to be repetitive. But I can't stress too much the importance of procedural bylaws, in my opinion. Those are incredibly useful tools, I think, for councils these days. Are you hearing me?
Yeah. I'm just
Okay.
listening, and I was trying to remember where we were before. I mean, you'd been to the board hearings about the watersheds and that, and I don't know if anything. They had the proposals up for the solar panel farms down there, and I don't know
Okay,
if
that was
anything
August.
new has happened on that or not.
Well, the big solar project, there were 5 small ones proposed here and then a huge one about 10 miles north of town, 9 or 10 miles north of town, Cordova. And the last thing, that was on August 4th, I believe. Now, don't quote me on dates and times through this show because I don't have my notes in front of me. I'm just
No, that's
yakking
fine.
with
No,
you.
that's fine.
So, but I know it was early August. That was a special planning meeting they held to deal with those. And it was televised. I think it was Chex TV. And the video is probably still online. So the last thing we heard about, of course, was that the council unanimously endorsed all of these solar projects. And, of course, they're going to be getting like $100,000 a year for the community vibrancy fund or whatever. So this is good for the community, right? As soon as there's to me the whole thing is like a bribery system, but they claim it's good for the community. I think it's not. So there you go. That was the last we heard of it. I don't know if the ISO approved that or not. It was, in the queue with a whole pile of others. Well, if it's not approved, I'm sure they'll go after it in the next round,
Yeah, but your council, they're bound and determined they're going to save us from global warming, right? So they have to put in the solar panels, right? Because they care, right?
It was really kind of, I think the funniest thing I heard was one of the supporters referred to it as farming the sun instead of farming the land.
Well, that's what.
No, it's farming the subsidies is more like.
Yeah, farming the
right?
subsidies, shearing the sheep. It's all rural stuff, right? Because up here, when they brought all the wind farms in, I find that it makes me smile when they said farming the sun, because up here we were farming the wind.
Yeah.
So it's all about farming. Everything's about farming, right?
Yes, farming subsidies.
You know, they just use terminology that they actually called windmills a new crop here, right?
Yeah.
It was a new crop, just like you grow wheat and you make so much off of wheat, and you grow windmills and you make so much off of those. It's wonderful, wonderful game. But you seem to have uh, a pretty good handle on the people down there as far as like my whole point here, I think, is that I'm starting to see people ask a lot more questions and starting to look at what's going on in their local area. And I know you've been, an advocate of this for a long, long time. And are your people coming along at all? Like they start to get a little more uppity, not uppity, but just trying to, figure out what's going on?
Yes and no. When they know about something that affects them personally, there'll be a
Right.
bunch of them show up en masse. The
Yeah.
rest of the time, it's pretty much just me and a neighbor, or even just me there if my neighbor's busy. So, again, if they are, they're hiding it really well. I hate to say there's a lot more people upset. There are battles going on here, but they're not publicized. There's nothing online. There's been nothing in the papers, and the most serious of them, there's nothing in the agenda or in the minutes. So again, a lot of the most important stuff that's being said and that's going on, there's very few people know about it. So, it's the same old problem. The biggest problem is the lack of transparency, the lack of information sharing. And I'm not too sure what all to talk about, but the procedural bylaws, I think I did talk on your show about it. I'm not watching the chat. I guess I should, because maybe some of your regular listeners have a better memory than I do, and they can say, oh, you already talked about that. But I think I meant I was going to do a brief review of the procedural bylaw roller coaster here, since the end of 2014, like a 2015 review. Because it's kind of been amusing. At the inaugural council meeting in December 2014, after the municipal election, they doubled down the restrictions on public input, what you can say. Right? They say, oh no, we don't regulate what you can say, but you can't say anything that's offensive or that to anybody. And without any definition on the words that they use, it's wide open. It basically gives them the right to shut you down if they don't like it. To me, it's a way of silencing dissent. So the restrictions that had been on public input on the agenda at each council meeting since 2010, December 2010, it was introduced on the agenda, and with strings attached, and then they were doubled down in December 2014. And and then of course there was a change in the that was done through a procedural bylaw amendment, replacement, whatever you want to call it. And then in the new year, I believe it was early April, they introduced another new procedural bylaw, ostensibly to just change the title of Reeve and Deputy Reeve to Mayor and Deputy Mayor. And so that was introduced and approved, unanimously endorsed. And then at that point, public input was still near the end of the council meetings. Do you remember me telling you about that? How silly it was. They said you couldn't talk about anything that council had already made their decision clear on, but then they had the public input at the end of the meeting after everything had been voted on. Basically, you couldn't talk about anything, right? So part of what I had campaigned on when I ran for election in 2014 was to move the public input up to the beginning of the meeting before there was any voting happened, up with the delegate presentations.
Yeah, see, I haven't been to a council meeting in a while, but I find that absolutely amazing that they moved it to the end.
Well, it had been at the end, always since 2010.
Was it?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that was going to be my update near the end of this, was that just within the last couple of months, they suddenly decided they would move it up because I talked about it and made the recommendation. I think it was in September at a council meeting. I mentioned, that this needed to happen, and by jumpins, I had a partial win. They did. They have moved it up now immediately following delegations on the agenda, so it's before any bylaws are approved or even before the minutes are approved. The agenda is approved, I think. But so that was really neat to see that
Well, that's
happen.
good because the
So
other way is asked backwards.
Well, exactly, and a lot of people recognize that, and I guess the council eventually did too, because they did. Unfortunately, they didn't fulfill my whole request, which was to lift a lot of these restrictions back off on what we could say. But I thought, well, one thing at a time. At least it makes sense to be able to speak to something that's on the agenda before the council has voted on it. A lot more sense.
Yeah, because our delegations are still at the beginning. As far as I know, I haven't been there for a while, so we got a new mayor, and they may have changed it because they don't want input, and they will do anything to stymie. We have a rule here that if you speak on a subject, you can't speak on it again for 90 days, right?
Right.
And I don't know if they have that at your place too or what, but this is ridiculous.
Well, that one I haven't seen, but we've always had the delegate presentations at the beginning of the agenda. It's near the beginning, but then the public input was at the end, right after they approved all the bylaws. The 3-minute thing. So now it's been moved up with delegation. So, I thought, great, this is great. It seems like I'm the only one that regularly uses that 3 minutes, but whatever. I far prefer it being at the beginning of the meeting. Be nice to see it before the delegations rather than immediately following, because quite often if there's a big issue in town that a certain group in town is interested in, they all come for the delegation presentations and then they just get up and leave.
Well,
so they miss the whole rest of the meeting when all of the really juicy stuff happens.
Yeah, what I found here when I would go to the council, I would have to stand up at this podium and that. But if they had someone at the council that they wanted to do a delegation on high density housing or a bike path, they got a chair and they got to sit down at this table, and there was all this interaction. But when I speak, the council's not allowed to interact with me, right? It's it depends what side you're on, right?
Right.
How you're treated, at least at our council. It's bloody ridiculous.
Yeah, again, by their own rules, there's not supposed to be any interaction. They can question delegate presentations, but with the public input, their own procedural bylaw rules have ruled out any interaction between the speaker and the council. And you've heard the recordings. Usually they're the first ones to break that. Right? You've heard enough of that.
I've asked them in the past. Do you have anything you want to any thoughts on what I just said? And they said, well, we're not. We can give you whatever. They can say something, but you can't take it from there. So they can say, Agenda 21 is a conspiracy theory, and then you say, wait a minute, we need to discuss that. No, you're not allowed to discuss it. They're allowed to give an opinion, right? Right. That's the end of it, right?
Participatory democracy. You get to participate, but it doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I know. Like a referendum versus a plebiscite, right?
Yeah.
You can referendum all you want, but they don't have to do anything.
Yeah, but go hydro bills. Now, I'm not sure if I saw this correctly or not. I saw a number of $37 billion or something, which cannot possibly be correct, of what we overpaid, or the amount of hydro that they dumped out of here over the last X number of years because we didn't have any use for it, and we had to pay people to take it off our hands. Do you know anything about that?
No. I don't. You'd have to get into somebody. My focus is not, I've teamed
up
with people.
I know.
This focus is the electricity sector and this kind of thing, but this is not one of my focuses, actually. I'm pretty much stuck on the local governance model and the changes in local. Yeah, I'm really into the local stuff. I do have an interest in all of the sectors, but only as it would relate. I like to relate things to what's going on at the local level. That way I can keep myself at least somewhat in check.
Well, it keeps you focused, right?
Well,
You read, well, yeah, but you read all of these council minutes, you read all of those documents, right? Which is, I know I've written or read enough of them. It's time consuming as all get out. But again, the only way you can get to the bottom of it is to read all that stuff.
well, exactly. And our council, the full agenda packages, they're scans, so they're huge. And if they are currently still having their planning meetings once a month in the morning, and then the regular council meeting in the afternoon on the same day. So I've seen times when you could have well over 250 pages between the two full agendas. If you're getting, and of course the planning meetings, people tend to overlook those because a lot of people still think of it like the old planning committee. They don't realize that this is it's not a regular council meeting. It's a council meeting. It's not just a planning meeting. And the decisions that are made at those meetings are quite often as or more important than the ones that are made at the regular council meetings, because that's where a lot of the Agenda 21 policies are coming in, is through the planning meetings. The planners and the planning committees. The property standards bit here in the rezoning is kicking in hard here now. I've heard it is elsewhere. So we've had a couple of really intense battles going on. I think two of them are still ongoing. I'm not going to talk about them because they're not publicized anywhere, not even in the agendas. The names are not mentioned, so I'm not going to do it either. The few that were back in the summer were outside of town. Basically, you're looking at people who wanted to build, and so they're cracking down on what they can have on the land while they're building and things like that. So all kinds of petty little things, but in recent months we've had another one come up that's outside of I might as well call it the urban growth boundary, because that's like a dividing line to me. And so on what would have been called agricultural land. And so that one there's been a big battle developed there. And, once the municipality, it seems like all of this stuff is largely snitch-based. If somebody complains, they love it when a neighbor complains about their neighbor's property.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to understand that they're not going to win anything that way by having the government at any level come down on their neighbors, because they're next in line. All they're doing is giving the government power over private property use. And private property, I know you don't like the term, but owners' decisions. It's a matter of changing who controls the interests in the use or the land. Who's controlling the decisions is what really counts. And as soon as a neighbor complains to a town council about another neighbor's or another person's property, and they get the town to spend all of the taxpayers' money coming down like, a ton of bricks on these people, then they don't realize that with that gain in power, that they can come after them next.
Well, this is the thing, and I just was sitting here listening to you as you were saying that, and I envisioned the phone call, hello, this is Mr. Smith, and my neighbor, his tree branch is hanging over my yard, or he hasn't cut his lawn in 3 weeks, and it's making the neighborhood look bad, and I can just see the smiles on the people at the municipal level when they get these calls, right? They must be almost giddy, right?
Oh, they must be. They must
Oh
be.
boy.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
goody.
yeah,
Here,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Another chance to exercise our power over what somebody else has paid for. Like this
Exactly.
really bothers me to no end. And when I was out campaigning in 2014 in the municipal election, I remember knocking on a guy's door. And he said to me, if you're elected, what are you going to do about this person's property? It's a real mess, and it's devaluing my property and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you got a catch-22 here. And I said to him, the problem here is that if the local council does something about their property because you don't like the way it looks, that means that next year there's a good chance that another one of your neighbors is going to decide they don't like the way your property looks. And, so we had this very discussion, and he says, well, you've got a point, but like when it gets to a certain point, you got to do something. And I said, well, here's what I would consider if I was elected. And I said, if enough people have a complaint about the look of someone's property, and they're willing to have their taxes increased to pay for the town to obscure it from their delicate vision, I would be willing to take the group and say, okay, well, here's what it would cost to put a great big huge high fence on the municipal road allowance around their property, so that you won't have to look at it, and you won't feel that it will affect the value of your property. But the neighbors who don't like the look of it will have to agree to pay for this, because these solid wood, you want to put up a solid fence so that you can't see it. But, if it's a neighbor on the side, they would have to agree to have the fence on their side of the fence line, right, the property line.
Right.
And then to the road, if you don't want to see it from the road, well, we could put the fence along the municipal road allowance, because nobody has property, their property doesn't go right. There's a certain amount that's municipal allowance on the side. So
Right.
I would be willing to entertain that kind of solution. But as far as coming down on them and forcing them to bear the cost of it, well, I don't think that's right, because they don't have a problem with the way it looks, especially if it's people who start complaining about a neighbor's property devaluing theirs, and they say, well, we won't be able to sell it. Especially I ran into one of those, and I said, well, here's the problem you're going to have is that property was like that when you bought this place, and you bought it.
Right.
But they don't like that.
No, they don't like that, because you're supposed to be the government. You're supposed to come to their aid to help them, and this is where people get really screwed up. But the reason I hate property, okay, is because property is a bundle of rights, okay, and rights can be given and taken. And so through these, UN agenda bylaws and stuff, they can, at the municipal level, that's why the municipal level is so important to this Agenda 21 and watershed, and which is all, it's all the same thing. That's why it's so important, because the municipality has the authority to write bylaws, okay, and those bylaws affect property. And so, you say, well, this is my property. Well, maybe your property, but your property is nothing more than a bundle of rights, and rights can be given and taken and added to and taken away and all the rest of it. So, if you complain that this guy's grass is too long and you don't like it, and it's irritating the hell out of you, and the municipality says, we'll warn him, and if he doesn't cut his grass, we'll cut it and send him the bill. Now that opens the door to bring in a municipal wide bylaw that says grass will be this long, period, and there won't be this weed in it or that weed in it, and if there is, then you're liable for a fine, or we will come in and fix the property and bill you for it. This is what I hate about the word property. It's not you don't own it. It's something that you have the ability to use, but they also have the ability to change the use of that anytime they want. That's what I find really dangerous about this fictional property
Well,
nonsense.
and that one,
If
you're getting into a controversial area. I
well,
don't
it's
think
not
I'll
really
go into that.
controversial. I mean, if you owned
Well,
your land, or the gentleman next door owned his land, to the guy that says that his property is being devalued because of the look of this guy's land. Well, if it's that guy's land, then that's his business. Now,
I,
but I'm also a huge believer in reasonable man. And so if you have a problem with your neighbor and your neighbors have a problem with the neighbor, then a group of reasonable people would, phone up Jim, who owns the place that particularly like the way the yard looks, and say, why don't we go have dinner or go get a coffee and hash this out between us, right? That's what men and women would do, but you get this government thing, and then these men and women who won't go and sit down with their neighbor and say, how can we fix this so everybody can live with it, right? Maybe come over
well,
on Saturday and give you a hand. Maybe you backs out. Maybe that's why it ain't been cleaned up, yada, 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 and deal with it.
yeah, well,
But as soon
that's
as you
what I
have,
said
well,
too.
but as soon as you have government involved in it, you have these people, instead of talking to their neighbor, they phone up the municipal hall and say, I'm really pissed about this guy. I told him to clean up. I've yelled at him. I've screamed at him. I kicked his dog and every other damn thing. He won't clean it up. This
Well,
is what you get. You get the government being used as an intermediate for something that people should have done, right?
well, they're using them and turning the government into a bully on their behalf. That's all it is. It's a form of
Exactly.
bullying. And, this is something that, we may not see totally eye to eye. It doesn't really matter. But,
Oh, it
as
doesn't
I
actually.
approach it with other people is that, okay, so most people, you take a town, you've got lots, right? And their description, they're in a deed and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So, it's easy to, I look at it in a rather simple way is that, okay, you've got this area that you paid for controlling interest in. Right, you've paid for controlling interest in this plot by this dimensions. These are the survey stakes. But this guy over here you're complaining about, he did the same thing.
Right.
So what is it that you think you should be able to cross that line and have controlling interest through government, because you don't have it on your own, so you want them to do it for you.
Right.
And you want them to take controlling interest in this little plot here that they have paid for just like you have. And so what do you think is going to happen next? Because as soon as you do that, you put the government acting on your behalf. And by the way, how can the government have more rights than you do? If you don't have the right to cross that line and insist your neighbor do what you want any more than you wanting them to do the same to you, how in the world do you think that you're requesting the government do it for you is going to make things any better? All you're doing is handing over your controlling interests and your neighbors to government.
I love the way you just said that.
Well, you remember that piece I wrote, the long rant, when I started that battle in 2011. That's basically what I'm saying. It's so simple to me. We have anyone who's had a real estate transaction, you've likely had a survey, I did. You got a deed, you got a title. It says you have paid for controlling interest in this area. Okay? And you've paid dearly for it. Probably if you've paid and had a mortgage, way more than you should have, okay?
Uh-huh.
But so has your neighbor. So has your neighbor. So to me, you got to keep it simple because it doesn't matter who it is or what the circumstances are. Admittedly, there are some buildings that may get so dilapidated they're dangerous. But again, you can't make one rule and impose it on everybody.
Well, that's the plan, though. That's the plan. They're just sitting there.
Is.
The government at this point is sitting there begging people
to
make complaints
Oh,
because then they make a a bylaw that covers the whole area, and
right.
now you have to have a purple front door, and you say, how the hell did that happen? Well, they passed a bylaw,
Yeah.
and
Well,
or that you can't have a purple door or whatever, right?
whatever it is. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter what it is. Your grass has to be a certain length. You have to have a certain, whatever it is. And again, if there's something that is really doing provable harm to your neighbor's property, oh, there's this thing called tort. You know? Get off your lazy butt. If it's that important to you, spend your money and go after them. Go after them yourself. Don't ask government to go after them for you so that you can have their property the way you want it at what you think is no cost or trouble to yourself, because it is going to be a lot of a cost and trouble to you and everybody else in the long run. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
yeah.
this is what's been going on here. There's been, and I'm seeing more and more of it as the property standards bylaw is kicking in, and as soon as you start seeing one or two complaints, if they work and people get up, and they get what they want, then you start seeing copycat, right?
Uh-huh.
And so we're seeing more and more. That is one thing I've seen in 2015. Now, on the positive side, as I say, we started off with this horrible restrictions added to public input, and then they had one, I believe it was April 7th, but don't quote me on that, early April, to change from mayor to, or from Reeve to deputy Reeve, same with, and so that was really interesting, because what was also included that is they had peeled back the new restrictions that they had imposed in December 2014, just a few months later. That was early February, so like 2 months later, all of a sudden, the added restrictions that had been put on in 2014 were taken off as part of that new procedural bylaw. So, of course, having read it in the agenda, I got up and spoke to that during public input at the end of the meeting and said, it was mentioned that the purpose of this new procedural bylaw was to change the title of the Reeve and Deputy Reeve, but I said, I think that what would be more important for most people to realize is that it also removed the restrictions that were added in December 2000. And so, of course, I got the deer in the headlights look. And so, sure enough, 2 weeks later at the next council meeting, there was another procedural bylaw amendment. And this one, there was no stated purpose there. It was just quietly but unanimously approved and nobody paying attention. And all it did was add the restrictions back in again. So that was 3 procedural bylaw changes in less than 3 months. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Well, when you said that deer in the headlight, I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen that look so many times. I've seen that look so many times, right? And it's almost funny, but extremely disturbing at the same time, right?
Well, it is, because that makes it so obvious that it's a means of control.
Exactly.
It's a means of controlling dissent and giving them it's a tool for them to shut down anyone from saying anything that they don't like. They can shut them down, right? And that it really appears the excuse, well, changing the title from Reeve to mayor, like whoopee-doo. But they never mentioned.
Now, what was? Do you got any idea what the purpose of that was?
No,
I mean, a Reeve
and
a Reeve is pretty much the same as a mayor, right?
It is, and I was talking to some people about it. That other researchers say that actually they think that was a foolish thing for the council to agree to, especially the mayor, because historically speaking, the term Reeve has a little more authority attached to it than mayor, because a mayor cannot actually be anyone appointed. It's much a looser term than Reeve.
Okay.
Like historically speaking. So this is, another, and I thought, yeah, figures, it's proposed by their staff, and yeah, okay, it sounds great. But when I spoke,
okay,
said,
so this is
the more important thing is the removal of these restrictions on public input. It was so obvious they hadn't even read it.
They don't read much.
I don't think so.
Hmm.
So I wasn't surprised when all of a sudden it got changed back. So, and then really nothing much happened on the procedural bylaw front until, again, like I said, this fall, and I think it was September, I spoke again and said this really needs to be moved to the beginning and blah, 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 and they did. So that was a positive thing. As, again, it would have been nice to see the restrictions removed again, but we'll keep working on that one. You got to have something to work on.
Yeah.
And,
But if it was a staff thing, then it was from the CAO to change it from Reeves to mayor. It wasn't the Reeves saying I want to be the mayor.
no, I really doubt that he would be
Yeah.
that, wrapped up in this.
No, I don't think
It
so.
was to
But
come in line with the neighboring municipalities because, this was the excuse given. I'm thinking, it sounds like an excuse to me. It's really
yeah.
like.
Well,
So
maybe they
that
want to
was,
send him to China or something, man, and they
I
can't
have,
send Reeves to China, so they can only send mayors, right?
well,
I
I have
was
no
reading
idea.
I was reading this last night, Kathy, on air, and it just boggles the brain, right? You know, and I know that a premier or a mayor going to China for trade deals completely outside the scope of their duties. And so I was reading last night some of this. I guess win now that she's got a majority, she's going to do some globetrotting and going to take trade missions. And so, they had the listing for some of the ones McGuinty did and some of the ones that Wynne has done. And we really need to tie them down because according to the numbers, every time they go on a trade mission, we lose money, big time. We do 2 million a year with, or 2 billion a year with China, and or they buy 2 billion from us, and we buy 35 billion, and every one of these numbers that they put out, we're in such a trade deficit, it's ridiculous. So it seems that every time our premiers and prime ministers and mayors go and cut a trade deal, we get the short end of the stick. And I have no idea what a premier would possibly know about business or a mayor would possibly know about business. It's just all front stuff, as they keep gutting us out, which is not good. But now we haven't discussed this for a long time, and I haven't heard anything about it for a long time. And you know how much time you spent on it.
You're not going to bring up Northland Power, right?
Well,
because I was it's funny.
I haven't heard anything about it for such a long time.
Well, and it's funny because, well, anyway, that's one of the other things I was going to talk about. One is the other thing that has come back that I talked to you about, I think back in 2013, was the attempted takeover of our local conservation authority, right?
Uh-huh.
So that has come back with a fury. It came back in September. And so this time, basically there was an attempt to threaten them with dissolution, the local CBCA board, if they didn't agree to this, they call it a service agreement with the larger conservation authority from the city down south. So, that battle has come back with a fury, and near the end of November, our council and neighboring village council or township council that's actually not even in our county, but they're part of the so-called watershed, they held what they called a joint council meeting. So, and I can't talk about that in great detail right now because that would be a whole show's worth what happened there. And it was referred to on our municipal website as a joint council meeting and a public meeting. And yet the agenda didn't come out until very close to the time of the meeting. I think it was the Thursday or Friday before. And they were having server problems. It was really hard to access. It took a long time to get hold of it. But there was no public input allowed. So here, I sent an email out to the clerk and asked her to, and she was very good, redistributed it to all the councillors on both sides, because my question is, how can you hold a joint council meeting and a public meeting and allow no public input. Like our council had thrown their own procedural bylaw to the wind that had public input on every agenda, right? And then a public meeting, by definition, how can you have any public meeting without public input? And they had invited 3 provincial level officials to come and participate. Unfortunately, it looked like none of the 3 could make it, but they did have a few of the local conservation authority board members showed up. They had invited them to come and ask questions, but as one of them pointed out, he could hardly have prepared decent questions because he got the agenda so late. And basically what they were talking about was the same old proposal that had been shot down back in, I believe it was October 2013. So, really they're talking about the same old thing at a joint council meeting. Now, what was interesting was the after effect, because I spoke to this during my public input, is that at the last council meeting, they had the agenda out and they had the minutes published from that joint council meeting. And the way they were written, I had some concerns that anyone reading them that hadn't been there and wasn't familiar with all of the board members' names and the public officials' names, that they would find the minutes very confusing. So I suggested an amendment to the minutes before they were adopted, right? Now that public input was at the beginning of the meeting, I thought, great, I can finally make this suggestion before it's too late. But it didn't help, and I'll tell you why. Because I made the suggestion, and I talked to the clerk, and she even agreed it made sense, my suggestion, and so did the mayor. I talked to him about it before public input. And so he said he would bring it up, and I said, well, great, if you bring this up and deal with it at the meeting, it'll save me doing it as public input. Fine. He brought it up, but then there was a problem. The CAO, his reaction to this suggestion was that, well, it could cause a problem because apparently the identical minutes had been unanimously approved by the other council the day before. So therefore, to amend them at our council meeting held the next day would present real problems now. So I'm thinking, so my reaction was, I couldn't help it, I had a little outburst, and my reaction was, well, here I thought it was so great getting public input moved up before the decisions were made so it would be more productive. Ends up, it's still too late if another council is approving. So, this gives people, and I've said to people, this should give people a fair idea of one of the unforeseen flaws in this idea of joint council meetings, which also could be an indicator of how unaccountable to the people regional government would be.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Because this was 2 councils in different counties, and yet they were nervous about trying to amend these minutes before, so they ended up unanimously approving them the way they were because the other council had unanimously approved them the day before.
But this is part of the trickery, right? The CAOs are the power in the government. It's not the mayor, and it isn't the deputy mayor, and it ain't the council. It's some freaking CAOs who are specifically trained in how to weasel. They're weasels in the hen house, right?
Well, the disappointing part is that nobody at the other council, the other council had pointed this out, that by the way, this, basically a point of clarification, on behalf of the general public that might read these minutes later and go, this doesn't make, the way it's written was very confusing. Well, it would have been very simple, and I'm thinking, goodness gracious, people from our municipality would have had to have had public input rights at a council meeting in a different county to be able to get this straightened. So it just shows you how twisted this has become.
And how
the way that
controlled
they're
it is.
operating. Well, this is all required in order. Do you remember the whatever it takes statement about this conservation authority? Well, we're seeing again another consequence of this whatever it takes methodology.
Right. So we know Kathy, so she wants to change this. So, okay, Mr. Mayor, we need to do this. We need the input. Okay, sounds good to me. I'll look at it. And then the CAO steps in and says, oh, no can do because this was already agreed to by the other council. And therefore, have a nice day. Thanks for input. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Nothing we can do about it now.
Well, they could. They could if they really wanted, but they would have to take it back to the other council who was part of the initial joint council meeting and get them to, again. So it would point out that they thought they had the right idea by holding this joint council meeting so that it was out of the control of the people exclusively in one or the other because there's no electorate for both together.
Right.
But the problem is they apparently didn't have the forethought of how this was going to work out after the fact when it came to the minute.
Well, I mean,
they hadn't thought that through.
If they've already approved it, and then it should have been wiped from the agenda at your end, and not brought up, or if you had,
or they would have had to have had another joint council meeting just to approve the minute.
Right.
And they would have had to allow public input from both electorates.
And it's all
But the problem is they can't do that because they barred all public input from either of the electorates or any of the public at the original joint council meeting, but they hadn't thought through the consequences.
Yes, but it's all
so
about...
now they showed up.
Well, yeah, but it's all about stymieing public input, right?
Well, to me, it's a really great it's a very small but a very significant forewarning of how the regional government might not work well for the people involved, too.
Well, it's not designed to work well for the people, so it won't work well for the people. Well, this is an indicator.
But this is a beautiful, don't you think, a beautiful little indicator?
Yeah, and
of how...
And I know that 1987 made-for-TV movie with Chris Christopherson and a bunch of other actors called America with a K. I know it's really long, right? But I mean, that was the same year Our Common Future hit the bookstores or hit the municipal halls, whatever it hit. And I mean, those two are mirrors of each other. That movie, made-for-TV movie America, and Our Common Future, if you put the Our Common Future beside that made for TV, which came out the same year, it's all about regionalization. It's all about regional government. It's all about taking the power away from the people at the local level, right? It's all about the feminization of boys. It's all about pushing the arts. I mean, they mirror each other so well, and I just wish people would take that freaking movie America. It's the same as I could move that movie America up to the Bundy Ranch or the Hammond Ranch. It's the same game, right? And you go back to the foundations, and what is the point of these foundations? Well, it's the Sovietization of America. Whoa.
You know what?
That's regionalization. It's the non-accountable government. It's the boards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the boards, the commissions, the committees.
Yeah.
The councils, unelected councils,
Right, given the power to make decisions.
I look at how many of them we've got, and I'm like, holy doodles, like what does it matter which party's elected or which politicians are elected if they're working, if they are bound by intergovernmental agreements that are, and the decisions are by consensus as advised by unelected bureaucrats. Right. What does it matter? But I wanted to mention to you, before I forgot, you were talking about the Hammond thing. I haven't read deeply on this, but in case you haven't seen it, there was some background on that in case you haven't been there on Vicki Davis's blog. Okay, if you haven't been there, check out what she's got about the Hammond case, and that's the technocratictyranny.com. Her blog.
What is it again?
The Technocratic Tyranny.
Technocratic Tyranny.
Yeah, the Technocratic
Okay.
Tyranny.
Okay.
And Vicki Davis's blog, okay? Because she's got quite a bit on there about that, and she was doing updates. And
Okay, that's good.
she's been following that. So I would check out her stuff, see what she's got. Again,
Yeah.
I've been really, it's funny, when there's a holiday, I'm busier than ever.
Uh-huh.
I have just been cooking.
Well, one of the
And-
guys that got was charged with what was it called? Whatever they called it with over at Michael Schmidt's farm. When I met him at the courthouse a couple weeks ago, haven't seen him in a long time, and he was telling me that they actually come and cut his grass and sent him a bill because again someone had complained about the length of his grass, right? And
Right.
And this is he can't believe what's going on, right? But
Yeah,
this is so people
They're
look at
pushing
it.
the green agenda, but they insist you cut the grass. Now go figure that.
Well, what
They
people
insist
say,
on conserving electricity, but they're pushing electric cars. Go figure.
really, eh? Really,
Yeah.
really. I know,
like-
I know.
Make
Don't
my
use
mind up, why don't
electricity,
you?
but plug your electric car in.
I know.
I don't know what it takes for people to wrap their mind around this stuff. I
Yeah.
really don't.
Yeah.
I saw a thing, and maybe you don't do electricity, but I saw a thing. Actually, on Facebook, you'll like this. On Facebook yesterday, there was something put in by what's the Ontario Wind Concerns or whatever it is, whatever it is, the Ontario Wind Group, and
Which one?
I don't know what are they.
I don't know. I think there's more than one, isn't there?
I think it was, I don't know, it was Wind Concern. It was one of the wind outfits anyways, but they put in this thing about, how power's gone up 357% or something since they
I'm
started
sure it has.
the energy thing. And, I just put in, well, that's all well and good, but I said, they were whining and complaining about it, and I just put in, well, that's good that, whining and complaining, but getting nothing accomplished is like what the purpose of
Yeah.
old opposition, right? And they've done
Well,
well.
this is the problem.
And I was waiting to get slammed, right?
And you didn't.
No, I was getting thumbs up, right?
Yeah, I think
and,
most of them caught on. I
Yeah,
really
this is the thing, and I say that the propaganda and the deception has only a shelf life of so long till people catch on to it, and I do believe they've pretty much caught on to it now.
And you know what? I would like to think that Marmara helped a little bit with that because we were totally isolated from, our battle here. When I say our, I mean my family and a few allies. Like, how few of us there were. We
Uh-huh.
didn't have a group, right?
No,
And so we were totally isolated from people fighting wind turbines and other things, And so, it was really something when I broke into, because they have a rather tight-knit circle, and they all have certain things that, they talk about and they're very focused on.
uh-huh.
And so when I kind of butted it, and I did, I very
Yes,
rudely
you did.
butted into their into their
you did.
conversation. And, especially at that time when the PC party, and this is where, I hate party politics because so many of them were totally convinced that the so-called conservatives were against wind and that would be their salvation, would be getting rid of the liberals. And I said, just a minute here, take a look at what we're facing and then figure out why this is, so it really, I would like to think it made a difference.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did because you actually came at it from not just outside the wind, but using a different renewable energy project to show what was
Well,
actually going on, I think. And I think
the
maybe
thing
that
was,
shook
it's
some
not a,
minds a little bit.
it wasn't a renewable energy project.
Right.
And that's what really threw them, because it had been marketed the same way.
Yeah. But I look at Marmara, right, as you would look like at any little town. But I look at sometimes I think about Marmara where you are, and because it's a small community, and you have big guns coming in there trying to take the place over. You have big guns coming in there with international investors trying to suck funds out of the place and to enrich themselves while putting everyone in the community at risk. And sometimes I just look at Marmara as a petri dish or something through a
It
microscope,
is.
right?
It's
And
like a little poster child, and because it's small, it's easy to see, or it's easier to see what's going on and where it's coming from.
right,
And so hopefully some of what we see and I talk about, people, it might give them what to look for in the larger urban centers, the larger, more populated, heavily populated municipalities, because, we have only 5 councillors. We have a small council. We only have 2 council meetings a month, So, and we're talking about relatively small budgets and amounts of money. So, but still, in principle, I'm sure that the same thing is going on everywhere. And that's why I was so pleased when I actually got to meet and talk to some of the people fighting Just Wind turbines, because it made it so it was hard for them to accept what was going on here, and yet they had no choice but to look at it and go, how can this be going on? There's the same kind of battle, but it's not a wind project. It's not even a renewable energy project. So then we started being able to get down to the root issues and what was behind all of it. And I'm really thrilled to see how many of them are asking a lot of different questions way beyond wind turbines.
well,
They
this was
really
the
are.
whole point. This was the whole point, is to get
It's
them
really
away from
gone.
staring at that particular tree and stand
Yeah.
back a little bit and look at the
Looking
forest.
at
And
what's behind it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
So
I have noticed that happening more and more through 2015 too. And I thought, this
well,
is great.
that's why I'm
Seeing
saying
signs of it.
2016. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but people are starting to get onto the deceptions and the controlled opposition groups and that, and the shelf life of the propaganda's really stale dated itself now. So people are starting to, and all you got to do is pick up a newspaper, for God's sake. All I ever look at a newspaper is the headline when I go to get a coffee, and the stories are so. I mean, the National Enquirer looks normal
Yeah.
compared to the headlines I see in the mainstream media.
Yeah, you're
So,
sorry. Are you over it too?
I am.
Your
We're just
show's
about
yeah,
out, so I'm going to say
you're
goodbye
just,
to you
I'm not
now.
even going to talk about Northland. We'll do that next
No, we
time. There's a
can't do
couple
that.
of
I
things.
got 1 minute.
No.
I just want to thank everybody for
I'll
listening.
say
I want
bye.
to really thank Kathy we haven't talked for a long, long time, and I so much enjoy talking to Kathy because she really is the poster girl for what needs to be done at the local level. You got to get in there. You got to dig. You got to get in their face. You got to hold their feet to the fire. And if you don't do that, then they got a free ride, which we shouldn't be giving them. I want to thank all the people in chat, UCY.tv. I want to thank Jules for all the hard work she does. And so in 1 hour from now, Hal's going to be on Behind the Woodshed. And make sure everybody tunes in for that because, well, he says crickets a lot. And, well, that's a pretty cool word. So I like when he says that. So yeah, be sure at 3:00 to tune in to Hal's show Behind the Woodshed. Always enjoyable, a well-versed man, a really knowledgeable man, and so I hear music again. I want to thank everybody, especially Kathy today. And, we, by the sound of it, are out of here. Back here Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. And till then, everybody be good. And keep for Iowa Sunshine. And take care, everybody. Bye-bye.